Well, let's talk more about the importance of this visit. Stevie O'Brien is a Liberal strategist, also principal and founding partner at Barrack Hill Public Affairs, and also with us today, Conservative strategist Jordan Paquet, Vice President at Blue Sky Strategy Group. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
So, Jordan, I'm going to get you to start us out because your party's been very clear when it comes, to this visit, and in fact, ahead of this visit, Pierre Poilievre did send a letter to the Prime Minister, essentially saying you've been a disappointment on the trade file. Mm-hmm. So that in mind, what then does the Prime Minister need to do in Washington today from a Conservative standpoint?
Well, the Prime Minister really set his own bar on a lot of this, starting before when he was sworn in and going into the election, that he said he's the expert, he knows how to get a deal, and then, coming off the campaign trail multiple times because he was talking about the trade war, and then all of a sudden this summer totally spun around and said, there's not a big rush to get a deal because we already have the best one. So I don't know what changed between then and now beyond, obviously, politics and public sentiment on it, but and interesting now he's going down and they're starting to lower expectations about what might actually happen. There's a lot of talk that seems to be happening, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of action, and I think that's what Canadians are really looking for out of this trip right now. What's actually going to come out of it?
Yeah, and without a doubt, the uncertainty that Canadians were feeling going into the election, many are still feeling now. So, Stevie, what do you think about this visit? What we're hearing from the Conservatives that the Prime Minister has not handled this file as well as they think he should.
I mean, I couldn't imagine Poilievre saying anything else. This is the issue du jour. He has to take sort of the contrary position. He has to be pushing the government to do more. If the Liberals were in opposition, they would be doing exactly the same sort of messaging. So that doesn't surprise me. I'm cautiously optimistic about the trip down. There's been, I think, Trump would love a distraction from his domestic U.S. shutdown and presenting himself as the deal maker, as some sort of thing. The strong man might be something positive that he'd like to have in American news cycles, which would be good for Canada. I'm hopeful that the Carney government has had some inclination of what this is going to be about, and that's the reason that they're going down with a sort of entourage of high-profile ministers, and within this time frame, they're hoping to get something out of it. It's probably not going to be a full final deal because we've got CUSMA coming up. But I think that they are hopeful, and it is based on expectations where they have been raised from the government. Is something they really need.
Yeah, so we'll see if actually anything comes out of it. Although it makes me wonder, though, because Jordan, you were talking about this change in tack almost that we've seen from the Carney government from that visit back in May and then the evolution over the summer to this now here in October.
Right.
But we've heard from the U.S. ambassador, for example, and we've heard Pete Hoekstra say he doesn't like the elbows up talk. He doesn't like what he interprets as an anti-Americanism right now in Canadian political parlance. Do you think Canadian officials need to change how they deal with this U.S. administration and drop a bit of the nationalism that in many ways has helped unite this country but seems to have rubbed the American ambassador and officials in D.C. the wrong way?
Well, to an extent, I think at least the governing party has seemed to drop some of that already. It used to be the whole elbows up approach, but now they've given concessions to the U.S. already without even actually asking. They've boosted defense spending or promised to boost defense spending because the Prime Minister or because the President asked for it. They got rid of the digital service tax. So all these things that they're just putting out on the table, but they're not getting anything in return. So yeah, I think when you're dealing with this administration, it is tougher, of course, because you're dealing with somebody like Donald Trump, who's more of a performance, and it's tough to kind of match that. So you do have to play into his ego a little bit and stroke his ego somewhat. I think we've seen the UK doing some of that and doing it quite well. So yeah, I think there does need to be some direct conversations happening. The Prime Minister has to make that point about how these deals and how interconnected our economies are, and that's why they need to come away with some type of win here because they haven't to this date.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the elbows up strategy has to change, or that parlance dropped altogether?
I think the elbows up was primarily in response to the 51st state rhetoric, which has largely died down. I know it sort of popped up again last week, but I think that was Canadians feeling very national pride and concern that there might be a threat to sovereignty. So I think that's where that primarily came from. Secondly, the trade war started I think the whole world thought this might be a bit of posturing. This might be political talk, it might be showmanship, and that Trump was just kind of doing, performative. But as time has gone on, you see that no, this is a real change in their strategy. They are pro-tariffs. The tariffs are not just a performance tool; they are a revenue generation tool. And so I think there is a recalibration. There's how are we going to operate? This isn't just for show. This is the new reality, and we're going to have a different tactic. And we're seeing a pivot there.
Recalibration, as you say, which actually brings me to Pierre Poilievre, because in the interview he gave, 2 weekends ago to Vashti Kapellos, whose name I can say because she's my friend. He basically said he would still be working towards a zero tariff trade agreement. But who really believes that is possible with this Trump administration so committed to tariffs?
Well, you have to work on it, and you have to make that case and convince, especially in some of the, Stephen Harper was really good about doing this and getting some of the softwood lumber tariffs dropped back in the Bush administration, also negotiating things with the Obama administration. Sometimes it's that quiet diplomacy that you do behind the scenes. When he went down, it was much thinner delegations that they would normally take, as opposed to Carney's probably taking the big plane Prime Minister Carney's taking the big plane with, tons of journalists and tons of staffers and cabinet ministers. So I think it's part of that style is a little bit different too. But just because we don't think something Trump might go for something doesn't mean we can't try. And it was the Prime Minister himself that said he was the one during the election that could get the deal, and I think largely was elected on that case.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it's almost a difference in strategy, right? Because on the one hand, you have Pierre Poilievre saying, I'm still going to push for a zero tariff deal, and now we're hearing from the government side, lowering expectations, saying we'll see what happens slowly, cautiously. What would you say to that, Stevie?
I still have a lot of faith in Mark Carney's ability to navigate this economic challenge. I think Jordan said something interesting about the behind-the-scenes work that Harper may have done in the softwood lumber. There's likely a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on between Canadian and American officials, between Carney and the White House, that we are not seeing play out. And we don't necessarily, until everything's done, know if the digital sales tax was a trade-off on something else. The negotiations are ongoing. It's frustrating sometimes on the outside that we aren't seeing, play-by-play, but it's probably better for Canada and the success of the negotiations that some of it can be done, in that quiet sort of negotiation between countries.
Okay, so now I have the Prime Minister in Washington. I will, by the way, be joining them. So what's a win here? What would you qualify as a win for the Prime Minister, a win for Canada with this visit to Washington? Jordan?
He needs to come with some type of commitment. If he can get some of these sectoral tariffs removed or at least lowered so that we can say that, we do have a special trading relationship, that the Prime Minister does have a good relationship with the President, it needs to be something like that. I'm not saying they're going to come out and say, okay, we have the whole Kuzma 2.0, here it is, renegotiated. That's a process that's going to take place over the next year. But just getting some of these sectoral tariffs dropped to at least to show, or getting some signal towards that, he needs something like that. If this is just another conversation, he could have did it by text, as apparently they text back and forth.
Okay, so some type of signal would be the very least that you're looking out of this trip to Washington. Stevie, what would qualify as a win for the Prime Minister and for Canadians with this visit? I
think I agree with Jordan that it's probably more than a signal, it's an actual movement on one of the tariffs, whether it's sectoral or the fentanyl border tariffs, which I think might be an easier one. They're just applied to Canada. There has been no real justification to use these, and they're being challenged in court. So it might be an easy place for Trump to demonstrate that he's forced Canada to fix the border and he's addressing fentanyl. There might be a good domestic message for him there, and it might be a good domestic win for Carney.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, if Carney is able to signal something like that, how bad is that for the Conservative Party, given this letter very public letter given by the Conservative leader today? I
don't think it's still going to have to result in our prices actually going to be coming down at our grocery stores. Is this actually going to, affect the day-to-day lives of Canadians? Look, I think Conservatives are hoping for a win. Everybody wants the economy to succeed, right? Like we don't want to see the country going bad just because politically it might be good for one party. So no, I think and Pierre Poilievre in his letter today had offered to reach out to U.S. administration officials and play that helpful part. So no, I think it's something that you do have that bit of approach that we have to get a win for the economy. So just because of who's in the Prime Minister's chair doesn't mean that we'll be somehow opposed to it.
Yeah. Any last words, Stevie?
I don't know exactly what Poilievre can offer in this sort of state-to-state negotiation, unless he's sort of saying, because we're ideologically similar, we might be able to get a better traction going in some of the conversations. I think that's a politically dangerous place to be in. I can't imagine that any of that will actually happen. But again, if we were in opposition, I would expect that the Liberal government would be saying, or the Liberal opposition party would be saying exactly the same thing. It's very difficult when a major issue is a foreign affairs issue, because opposition parties have less to do and less impact.
Yeah, and more so with this administration, because the negotiations, where last time senators and Congress people seemed to have influence on the administration, this time around it seems very much a top-down kind of exercise in Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, listen, Stevie, Jordan, thank you for this. Always appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thanks.